Welcome to our Al-Monitor Pro live webinar discussion on what to expect from Israel's new government. I'm Andrew Parasiliti, president of Al-Monitor, and we'll be talking about events in Israel today with Al-Monitor Israel columnist Ben Caspit, who's joining us from Tel Aviv. Ben, welcome.
Hi, Andrew, and thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here again with the terrific Al-Monitor team.
Thank you, Ben. It's great to have you here. And for those of you who want to ask questions, please do so via your Zoom Q&A function. We'll receive the questions here, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Ben, let's get right into it. We titled this session, What to Expect from Israel's New Government. Well, we saw what we could expect this week. Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister of National Security, went to the Temple Mount. This produced a diplomatic crisis with the United States, with Arab countries, including those who have made peace with Israel, and also at the UN Security Council. Tell us what more we can expect. Is this a passing storm or the beginning of cyclone season?
Okay, where to start? First of all, what to expect? Expect the worst. Then I think we are in the beginning. We ain't seen nothing yet. It's only the promo. And we should expect a storm and an unpredictable one, because this government contains so many radicals and so many people that you really cannot understand or know or predict what they're going to do. Then everything can happen in any time. And this week's example with Itamar Ben-Gvir is not the best example, because all the people that thought that we will experience now rockets from Gaza and maybe demonstrations and violence in the West Bank, it didn't happen. Gaza shot or launched one rocket the night after the Itamar Ben-Gvir visited the Temple Mount, and it fell in the Gaza territory, not even in Israel. And interestingly, Israel did not retaliate. With the previous government, when Lapid and Bennett was in charge, the IDF, the Air Force, retaliated on every rocket that was launched, even if it didn't hit any target. Now you see Netanyahu, that was supposed to be more extreme than Lapid, did not retaliate because he wanted to get as soon as possible back safe home. And another thing about Ben-Gvir, he is really a radical, but he went to the Temple Mount in a very peculiar, very strange way. He saw the head of the Shabak, the Shin Bet, and the visit was very early in the morning, without press, without publicity, only 12 or 13 minutes. This is not the real Ben-Gvir visit. When he was in opposition, he was visiting with press, with screams and shouts. He wanted, as a pyromaniac, to set fire. Now, he's not the pyromaniac anymore. He actually is the firefighter as well. So he did it because he suffered a lot of criticism from his base. Why aren't you going to visit the Temple Mount? He did it twice a week when he was in opposition, but he did it in a very moderate way. So, and it shows us the inner paradox in this government. On one hand, they know that there is an international community, and Netanyahu lectured Ben-Gvir and lectured Smotrich, and you saw the results of this lecture in the Wall Street Journal piece that Smotrich wrote a week ago. But on the other hand, these guys are really radicals, and I don't see anything good on this front coming from this government. When I see the plans, when I see what they did to the IDF, to the Ministry of Defense, tearing apart the border police from the army, etc., I guess we're going to talk about it as well.
Ben, you're the author of The Netanyahu Years. You followed the prime minister's career as closely as anyone. This is the 6th time Netanyahu has been prime minister of Israel. One of his signature foreign policy accomplishments has been the Abraham Accords. Events like this threaten or at the minimum complicate the normalization process. Netanyahu, as you've written, would like to expand the range of countries that have normalized with Israel, including Saudi Arabia. That seems farther out of reach, I would think, given the composition of the current government.
Yes, the big dream of Netanyahu is Saudi Arabia. If you remember, Andrew, in his last days in office, he met the Crown Prince, MBS, and then he leaked this meeting to the press, and MBS was so furious about it that I guess he never spoke with Netanyahu since. Now, this Ben Gvir visit to the Temple Mount has already complicated the situation because Netanyahu was supposed to visit Abu Dhabi next week. He's waiting to this visit, and also his wife, maybe more than him. Since the Abraham Accords were signed, I don't know if you're aware of it, he was not able to visit Abu Dhabi because we had problems with Jordan. There was an affair when the Jordanians did not approve the Prime Minister's plane to go over Jordan because of a crisis. Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid visited Abu Dhabi and actually got the credit and the publicity coupons for this achievement. Netanyahu is now planned to go to Abu Dhabi next week. Right now, this visit is delayed. I hear from my sources that this visit is canceled, but as always, it is repairable. I think a week or two, maybe a month will pass and he will go there, but see how much he was charged to pay for this peaceful visit, and imagine what other steps in the territories in the West Bank will cause this dream of normalization. Another word about Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords. It can happen only with the cooperation of Washington, of the White House, of the United States, changing its policy towards its Saudis. I don't see such a heavy gesture by the Biden administration to Netanyahu when he's forming such a government. And I don't think anything like a peace with Saudi Arabia is going to happen, and unless Netanyahu changes in a dramatic move the coalition. But this is political topic in Israel. Will Benny Gantz or Yair Lapid, separated or together, will be able to join Netanyahu if he hits the rocks and maybe understands that this government cannot survive? But it's too early to call to take this call.
A reminder to our viewers, you can ask questions of Ben via the Q&A function on Zoom. So please submit those. We'll get to as many as we can. Ben, let's talk a little about Iran. You've covered this, I think, more closely than anyone, any journalist in Israel. Tell us how you see that issue evolving. I noticed that Netanyahu's speech before the cabinet last week, I think it was his first address to the cabinet posted, was all about Iran, that he's going to keep the pressure on, be sure that there is no nuclear agreement. It seems that in Washington, the nuclear agreement is close to dead, may have a faint pulse, if that. How do you see that issue in terms of U.S.-Israel relations and overall with regard to Israel's foreign policy and national security interests under the new government?
One cannot imagine Benjamin Netanyahu without Iran. He's dealing with this issue since the late 80s as an ambassador to the United Nations, and all his career. You cannot imagine anything about this leader without this threat that he uses in order to get support from the Israelis that are frightened from a nuclear bomb in the hands of the Ayatollahs, and he's the master of using these fears. Now, Netanyahu is focused on Iran. He nominated Tzachi Hanegbi to the post, a very important post of the National Security Advisor. Tzachi Hanegbi is pragmatic, he's very experienced, he's a veteran. He's the only politician that the late Ariel Sharon saw that can maybe fit the place or the shoes or the suit of a prime minister after Sharon, but because he left Likud and joined Kadima, he lost his chances to be the Likud leader. Right now he's there, and he was talking before the election. Even to me, he was saying that Netanyahu will launch a military strike on the Iranian infrastructure, the nuclear infrastructure. And this is the Tzachi Hanegbi post, and this is also the Netanyahu dilemma. Now, the government, unlike the government in between 2009 and 2013, the last time this strike was relevant, it was a total different government. Netanyahu did not have the majority in the cabinet to such a strike, and all his generals, Gabi Ashkenazi and the late Meir Dagan and many others, opposed this move. Now, what about the Americans? I don't know if you remember, Andrew, but when Netanyahu flew first time to see President Obama in 2009, they were both rookies in their offices. There was a huge headline in Yediot Achronot, Bushehr, Bushehr for Itzhar. Bushehr is a place where a lot of nuclear infrastructures in Iran are posted, and Itzhar is a settlement, an extreme settlement in the West Bank. The Americans said, Bibi, help us in the territories, be more flexible, more pragmatic with the Palestinians. We will help you with the Iranian issue. At least we will consult with you. You will be our partner. He did not fulfill his part, and Obama did not fulfill his part. And now it is a lot more, it is a lot worse, because this government is not only, no one is dreaming about Netanyahu freezing the construction in the settlements. A thing he did after President Obama demanded it. Now it is not on the table, so I don't see any reason for the American administration to cooperate with Israel in its way to strike Iran. By itself, it is almost an impossible mission. I think Israel right now is investing billions of shekels to upgrade its military, what we call military option, but still, it's a lot of way to do. It's not a nuclear reactor. It is many, many, many places. A few of them are buried under the rocks and under the mountains. So it's too big on Israel. You need the coverage, at least the coverage or the help, maybe in the day after of the United States. And I don't see Netanyahu getting this kind of help or cooperation from the American establishment right now. But he is a master. He will work on it very hard. You will hear the names of Tzachi Hanegbi, of the ambassador that is living on its post. It's the ambassador that Naftali Bennett nominated, Michael Herzog, staying there, and of course of Ron Dermer.
Ben, we have a question that follows nicely from that last conversation, not only with regard to Iran, but how do you see the relationship with the United States evolving? Lots of issues on the table. We've talked about a few. And how does the Biden-Netanyahu personal relationship factor into the next few years that they'll both have to coexist and work closely together?
Yes, this is also a paradox, because Biden and Netanyahu know each other for dozens of years, I think 25 or 30 at least. And everyone remembers that when Biden visited Israel exactly when Naftali Bennett switched places with Yair Lapid, he saw Netanyahu in the airport and walked to him, shook his hand and said, Bibi, you know I love you. But it's a love-hate relationship. I think one of the worst things that happened to Biden in the last year was the victory of Netanyahu, and Netanyahu coming back to the Prime Minister chambers. He did not like it, and we are going to face a roller coaster between these two people. It will not be like the Obama 8 years, because I think Netanyahu was able to outmaneuver Obama for 8 years. And it was the great victor of this relationship, because in the last year, Obama did not want to hear about Netanyahu. He just forgot about it. That the revenge was bitter with this final vote in the United Nations when the United States did not veto a decision, a resolution in Security Council, first time after many years. This time it will be a lot worse, because this time Netanyahu is surrounded by radicals. We're talking about Palestinian in the territories. We're talking about Israeli democracy. We're talking about minorities. We're talking about women rights. We're talking about things that were so obvious, and now all of these things are under threat. And Netanyahu will have to be in its best performance in order to try and run between the raindrops and stay dry. I don't think it's possible. I think he will have to pay something, to give something to the president. And we did not speak about the brutal attack that we are facing right now on the Israeli independent judicial system, and I guess or hope that we'll talk about it later. So I think in order to overbridge the gaps that are going to and widening all the time between Israel and the United States, and don't forget, Andrew, it's not only that, they call Israel the biggest aircraft carrier of the United States in the world. When we're talking about this treaty, this friendship between these two nations, we're talking about common values. And many of these common values right now in Israel are just under threat. You see that we have a minister or a vice minister, I don't remember, Avi Maoz in the coalition, that calls gays and lesbians and pedophiles and sick people. We have the ultra-Orthodox that don't see many of the advantages of democracy in their agenda. So we are in a very complicated situation, and also, not only the administration. Let's talk about Jews. Most of the Jewish population in the United States are reforms and conservative Jews. I'm talking about millions. And you have large parts of this coalition that don't see them as Jews, and these are the guys that I think most of the contributors to Israel, most of the influencers in AIPAC. So even this treaty and alliance between parts of the Jewish people is under threat and danger.
Reminder to our viewers, we've already got a long list of questions. We want to get to as many as possible. You can submit questions via the Q&A function on Zoom. Ben, you mentioned the judiciary issues in Israel with the new government coming in. You have an article which will be published on Al-Monitor today about this subject. You described it in some very stark language. You've used the term coup, a revolution, that this is something that is unprecedented in terms of Israel's history and the approach of this government toward the judiciary. Tell us a little about this.
Yes, yesterday, on Thursday, there was a very crucial hearing in the Supreme Court about appeals that were filed against the nominating of Aryeh Deri, the leader of Shas, to the post of minister. Actually, two. He got two ministries, two very important ministries in this cabinet, because he was charged and convicted twice. First time he went to jail, then he waited for the 7 years that he has to be outside outside the political system, and then he came back. He was a minister, and then he was convicted again. And now the government, the new government, before it was established and swore in, they changed a basic law in order to enable this very important nomination, because Aryeh Deri is the #1 ally of Benjamin Netanyahu. So the night before this crucial hearing, Minister of Justice Yariv Levin, the closest man to Netanyahu, had held a press conference and introduced his reform plan about the judicial system in Israel. And it is, in my words, this is demolishing Israeli democracy. Imagine, Andrew, that the judges in Israel will be nominated by the politicians. And don't think about the president of the United States, because we don't have constitution. We don't have any checks and balances. We don't have two houses of parliament. We don't have nothing. The only thing we have is the independence of the judicial system. And now when the nominating and the promotion of judges will be dependent on the politicians, this is the end of the story. Now, it's not the only thing. They want to statute an overriding clause that will enable the Knesset just to cancel any decision of the Supreme Court against the government in a minimal vote of 61, that every government has it. And it means that there will not be a Supreme Court in Israel. There will not be any force or authority that can criticize the government. The government will get all the powers without any checks and balances, and it goes on and on. It's not the only clauses of this plan. And I think this is going to bring us to a car accident in 200 miles speed. This is the perfect storm, because what happens if Supreme Court says next week that Aryeh Deri cannot be a minister in this government? What the government is going to do is to have a new statute that will cancel the ability of the Bagats of the Supreme Court to do it, or just not obey it. So imagine that the government is not obeying a decision of the Supreme Court in all this reality and chaotic reality in Israel, when the Prime Minister, the serving Prime Minister, is under trial, criminal trial. By the way, all the motivation to this revolution comes from the Netanyahu criminal files and charges. This is there is no question about it, because for 15 years, when he was a prime minister, he defended the system, and you can Google and see how many times he hails himself and praises himself and says, listen, I will not let anyone touch the Supreme Court. I will not anyone touch the independence of the system, etc., etc. And I refer you also to what the Professor Alan Dershowitz, one of the closest Netanyahu supporters, he was interviewed in Israel a few times, and he said, Bibi, it is not broken, don't fix it. The system in Israel is very prestigious. This is the umbrella under the IDF in the territories, because the world knows that we have control, we have independent judges, we cannot do whatever the government wants to do in the territories, and now we are going to lose it. And also about the citizens' situation, you will not be able to appeal. No one will stop the government. This is terrible, and I see if no one will stop it, it can cause Israel a chaotic situation, very large demonstrations, and as I said in the beginning, Andrew, we ain't seen nothing yet.
Ben, you had the scoop on Netanyahu's position regarding the Israel-Lebanon demarcation agreement during the campaign. Netanyahu was critical of the deal, but since he became the premier nominee, and then since time in office, it seems to be a done deal. How do you see the demarcation agreement and the next steps with regard to Israel-Lebanon relations?
This is a done deal. Netanyahu criticized this agreement and launched a brutal attack on Lapid before and after he signed it, only for political reasons. Netanyahu is a clever guy, maybe the most clever guy that was a prime minister in Israel in Israeli history. And he negotiated the same deal a few years back. He knows that all the military establishment, from the chief of staff to the head of the Mossad and everyone, and the national security advisor, was not just approving, they were pleading the government sign this deal immediately, because the next month we will not have who to sign it with, because President Michel Aoun finished its term. There is no one to sign a deal with Lebanon right now, and Netanyahu knows it. Right now, he will not touch this deal. He is looking at Hassan Nasrallah very carefully. We have a lot of rumors about Nasrallah's health in the last few weeks, and there is a little paradox here between the first instinct that you want your enemy to die, or you want to get rid of your enemy. But I can tell you, Andrew, I heard myself in my own ears from numerous generals. I'm talking about intelligence. I'm talking about all the areas in the military that told me we have to pray every morning to Nasrallah's health and longevity. Not because he's a Zionist, he's a bitter enemy, but because we know how to deal with him. He knows how to deal with us. The status quo is good for everyone, and we learn from the experience that we will ever miss the ex-leader, like everyone is missing Saddam Hussein right now, and Muammar Gaddafi, and everyone, even Yasser Arafat. So this guy, we know him, he knows us. There is a language that we're speaking with him, and it's stable. What Israel likes more is stability. So I don't see anything interesting happening on this front, unless, of course, something that can ignite the whole front, and then we'll have what we call the first big northern war, because it will not be a Lebanon war. It will be Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Yemenite Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, Hamas, Jihad, Islamic Jihad, Palestinians in the territory. It can be very interesting.
Ben, the time is winding down, but I want to get to a few more questions, because there are many, and there are a few issues we haven't covered yet. And
I will be short.
Okay, good. No, good. But let's get to one here. We haven't talked much about the Netanyahu government's approach to the Palestinian issue. This is also a priority for U.S.-Israel relations. What do you see happening? And break it out into two aspects. One is dealing with the authority and the issues in the West Bank, including Jenin and Nablus, which have recently been hotspots and the focus of Israeli military activity, and the approach to Gaza and Hamas.
What we saw in the Netanyahu years, this is, by the way, the name of my book, is a very clear strategy, weakening the Palestinian Authority in the territories, in the West Bank, and strengthening Hamas, because as long as the Palestinians are divided between Hamas and Fatah, it's good for Netanyahu, because no one wants him to deal or to negotiate about anything. So this is what we saw from him. When Bennett and Lapid came to power, they switched it and reversed it. And they, especially Benny Gantz, he met Abu Mazen once or twice. The contacts were very close. Now, we all have to fear for Netanyahu going back to his old strategy, because right now, the Palestinian Authority is so weak. It needs only one very, very small blow that can kill it totally, and then we will face chaos in the territories. This is exactly what Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir want to see. It is not something that Benjamin Netanyahu wants to see, but you can lose control on it in a matter of moments. And what we call ride on the tiger. You unleash the tiger, and then you try to ride him, like what Yasser Arafat did in the Second Intifada, it will never, the result will be tragedy. So I think one place you have to watch, especially the Temple Mount, but also between settlers and Palestinians, the forces that are supposed to restrain the extreme settlers. Vast majority of the settlers are citizens, obedient citizens in Israel, but you have the extreme settlers that will feel now that they have a license not to kill, but to do whatever they want. So I foresee a lot of trouble, and the tension is rising, and the air is full of you only need one light, and everything will blow up. And I hope, very hope, to be proved as someone, as an analyst, that was wrong, but the situation is not going to be any better.
What about the Arab parties within Israel? They, and especially Mansour Abbas of the Ram party, was instrumental in the election of the last government. What's their role this time around? Again, here at Al-Monitor, you and of course Afif Abu Moshe have really been covering that closer than anybody. But tell us how you see their role. Is there any role at this point for the Arab political parties after what's happened?
I see Mansour Abbas as the modern Anwar Sadat, the late Egyptian president that just decided, now I'm going to make peace, and took a plane and flew to Israel. Then the chief of staff, I think, Mota Gur, was convinced that when the doors of the airplane will open, not Anwar Sadat will get out, but Egyptian commandos that will try to kill all the Israeli government. But Anwar Sadat went out, and there is a peace between Israel and Egypt for decades. Mansour Abbas is such a leader in this kind of magnitude. But right now, it's a tragedy. He's out of government. He is now a part of the opposition, led by Lapid. The other Arab party, Ahmad Tibi and Ayman Odeh, what was called the Joint Arab List, is not in the opposition and not in the coalition. They will work with anyone that will pay. So it's such a, you cannot tell Netanyahu anything, because he made business with these guys all his career. But if someone else is talking to them, he is a traitor and anti-Zionist, etc. So the Joint Arab Party stayed in the same place. I'm not opposition, I'm not coalition, I'm not really playing in the political game. Mansour Abbas remained in his ideology. Very important. I want to be part of the political system. I want to take care of my people. He gained 5 mandates. It's 20% more than he gained in the last time. So he is the big white hope of Israelis, Arabs and Jews combined. And Yair Lapid gave me an interview this weekend to Ma'ariv, and he told me that he hopes very much when he comes back to power, I don't know if it will happen in 2024, he will form a government again with Mansour Abbas. And these are very good news if it happens.
How is Netanyahu's future looking with regards to the corruption charges?
The trial is on. It will take, I guess, around 1 or 1.5 years until the sessions are over, and then you will expect the verdict, and then the appeal. If Netanyahu will be convicted, he will appeal, and vice versa. But the question, the big question is, will this trial go on? Because right now, Netanyahu is, I think, in his political power, is paving himself a lot of escapes. One escape is what we call the Dairy Law that just passed, that says that if you are convicted but without serving time in jail, it's you can go on in your political career, and what you will have to do is just go on and because he's what we call the poison machine of Netanyahu, is launching daily attacks on the trial, on the criminal charges, on the attorney general, on the judges, on the lawyers, on everybody. And a vast, a big part of Israeli public is convinced that Netanyahu was framed. So he will be able to go on in this campaign. And when the system is tired enough to negotiate a plea bargain without time in jail, and it's all over. But this is the better option. The worst option is that he will, within this revolution, judiciary revolution, he will split the post of the attorney general, and for an attorney general in one side, and the special legal advisor to the government on the other side. He will leave the current attorney general, Gali Barav Miara, the second post, and the new attorney general, one of his people, will just reverse and pull back the criminal charges, and everybody happy and no trial. So everything is possible. Netanyahu still claims, and all his supporters, that no, don't worry, the trial will go on. If I will have to bet on it, it's 50-50. I am not sure at all that this trial will reach the stage of verdict, and maybe it will be a plea bargain that will be more blackmailed from the system than a real plea bargain. And this is also a very bad news for the independence judicial system in Israel, that already sent to jail one president, one prime minister, one minister of finance, etc.
Ben, what is the threshold in Israel for action against Iran? Is it 90% enrichment? And in the meantime, do you expect an intensification of covert operations by Israel against Iran?
The real intensification of covert operations against Iran was in the days of the previous government. The pragmatic and the not so extreme Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett. Naftali Bennett, as was exposed in the Al-Monitor, he declared a new strategy of hitting not the arms of the cat, but the head of the octopus, maybe, but its head in Tehran. I don't see anything Netanyahu can do better, because Mossad is working and the cyber is working and everyone is working. The question is what is the threshold to a military strike? And I think the red line is if intelligence will bring details of an Iranian the Iranians going to what we call the weapon issue, weaponizing a bomb. Because talking about uranium, they are already there. They are a threshold state. Enriching from 60 to 90 is a matter of 3 or 4 weeks. So the assumption is they have enough uranium for a bomb. But this is not enough. If you want to be nuclear, you have to be able to take this yellow cake and put it in a ball like a basketball, and then have a missile capable to take it to its distance with many other things. And this missile, because this is intelligence are saying it is 2 years. But the bad news is that proving this track is more is undetectable to intelligence. It's more difficult for the Mossad to know exactly where the Iranians are now in this weapon group. So if Mossad will come to Netanyahu and say, listen, they are moving fast on this track, I think every prime minister in Israel will have to do something, even to halt it for 1 year and pay the very heavy price of a war.
Then how much of a challenge will Netanyahu's coalition face in implementing these policies? And you've talked about many, what you've described as extreme policies, with regard to social issues, the judiciary, with the approach to the judiciary. What will be the reaction of civil society? We've seen many demonstrations, and how stable is this coalition? Could it in fact collapse?
I don't see this coalition collapsing right now without any catastrophic event regarding security or economy. It's very homogenic. It's unprecedented, by the way. We never had such an homogenic right-wing coalition. The opposition is very weak. It's not united. Gantz is against Lapid. Lapid is against Gantz. Labor is hardly breathing, and the Arabs are not a real opposition. So the only thing that can do something here is the public. And the energy is gathering. I don't know exactly where will be the point when the critical mass of energy will erupt, like it happened in 2011 in what we call the summer of 2011, about the prices, about housing, and 500,000 Israelis in a state of 9 million. Imagine, translated to American numbers, were demonstrating, and Netanyahu was frightened. And it caused him to release 1,100 prisoners. 400 of them are murderers for Hamas, to get back the soldier Gilad Shalit, to appease the masses. So take the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox control on all the money thing in the coalition. Take the economy that is not going to flourish because there is a crisis of high-tech all around the world, and Israel is the startup nation. Security that it's not going to improve, and the feeling of the common Israeli that he is being struggled by reality. And you see it on the polls. In a poll a few days ago, Netanyahu fell from 32 to 26 mandates. It's a 20% loss within days. Vast majority of Israeli public, also from the right wing, is opposing the nomination of Derry, is opposing the revolution on the judiciary system. So the situation of Netanyahu in the public opinion section is very fragile. He knows it. And I don't know to answer the question, will he be able to contain it? Because the only power that can stop all this to happen is only Israeli united public, that it will go, like General Eisenkot said, 1 million demonstrators in Jerusalem.
Ben, let's leave it there. Thank you very much. As outstanding analysis. Thank you for all your contributions to Al-Monitor. A reminder to our viewers, you can read Ben twice a week at almonitor.com. If you're not reading it, you're missing a lot, as you can tell right now. Also check out Al-Monitor Pro, where we do deep dive into a number of the key issues facing the region. Thank you again, Ben. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you, Andrew. It was a pleasure. Thanks.